Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to today's chat and channel session where we are going to be discussing and breaking down some of the roots behind uncertainty. Now, this is something that I know myself as a spiritual person and healer has struggled with. I know many of my clients and peers who also do this in their line of work have struggled with our relationship with uncertainty. However, regardless of how much responsibility we take on in terms of our gifts and abilities and the ability and want or need to manifest or heal, in my opinion, there will always be some sort of relationship that needs to be developed with uncertainty, because while we are part of the living world, while we are co-creators with the universe and with all that is, there will always be additional factors, no matter how much knowledge or connection we have. So I want to break that down a little bit more and help us understand where some of our negative connotations and associations with uncertainty can stem from in my personal and client experience, so that the understanding of these things can help empower us and help us develop a new, more embracing relationship with uncertainty and the unknown. So I know that sounds like a lot, but I would like to invite you to just relax with me during this channeling session. I invite you as well to bookmark this and come back to it anytime you're going through a difficult or liminal transitional space in your life and uncertainty feels really overwhelming to you, and or get out a journal or your favorite notes app and do some stream of consciousness writing along with me as you listen in, because this is a stream of consciousness channeling and projection, a vocal light codes projection. So it actually has the power to invite your guides in if you so choose to embrace them and help you to get to the roots of some of your own information, channeling and streaming through for you in your stream of consciousness writing. So if you are new here, welcome. My name is Danielle, #damsel at Enlightened Edits of damseldesigns.com. I am actually a psychic medium, spiritual advisor, quantum channel, and energy healer, as well as life coach and energy artist. And in these channeling sessions, as I said, we work with the vocal light codes that my guides help me transmit through my voice, as well as with topics that are presented to me by my guides, or in some cases by some of you, and have this stream of consciousness channeling. Now, if you would like to work with me personally or find more information about me, you can find that through the links in the video description, but I would really like to dive in now. So if you're ready, sit back, relax, and let's get started. So in my experience, having an unhealthy relationship with uncertainty tends to stem from the way we grew up, as does so many things, which is why I find inner child work and inner child healing so important. But I have found that, especially as I've been working with clients who, of course, everyone grows up in different circumstances, those of us, which I include myself in this group, who grew up with caretakers who developed a sense within us that uncertainty was inherently bad and wrong, and that the only thing you could count on in terms of uncertainty was that it probably would not go your way, tend to move through life with this relationship with unknown and uncertainty and instability that gives us a sense of distrust and dysregulation with the universe, with our higher power, with others, and even with ourselves. And I actually heard a quote not too long ago from someone I admire, Gloria Steinem, where she was talking about how she grew up in quite different circumstances. She did not grow up as a person of much means. However, her caretakers and her father in particular was able to give her a sense that uncertainty could actually be a good thing. So to paraphrase her and her quoting of him, she said that he would say if he didn't know what was happening tomorrow, it could be wonderful. And in hearing this, it really just blew my mind, because it pointed out to me so much of my own stuff and the patterns that I've seen and helped clients through, which is that most often, light workers and empaths, in my experience, will be part of this other group that I'm a part of, where we've grown up thinking that uncertainty has to be bad, that if we roll the dice with uncertainty, chances are things are not going to turn out great for us. And so we become these sort of codependent, and in some cases type A or control freak, if you prefer that term, which I do not say with negative connotation, personalities who try to take on a lot in order to control the uncontrollable, or to try to outwit or beat the uncertainty factor by taking into consideration and carrying as much as we possibly can, and in most cases more than we actually can or should be taking on, to try to ensure some measure of positivity. And this logic is inherently flawed, because what happens then is we tend to hurt or harm or burn out ourselves in this process, and we're not taking part in the trusting and co-creative relationship with the universe or higher power that most of us actually say that we believe in, because there's a part of us, most probably a wounded inner child or soul loss fragmented part of us, that believes and has been taught the belief that uncertainty is wrong or is bad, or again, will probably not go our way. And so we go on this process of self-awareness and of healing and of reprogramming so that we can change that belief, and so that we can start to become or create a reality where the universe does take care of us, and that when even things are uncertain, things can happen for us and for our benefit and for the benefit of the people and projects that we want to help within the world. This is why I believe so many spiritual people, myself included, have struggled with the process of manifesting, right? Because in anything you do in this world, but most especially with manifesting, especially manifesting something from nothing, we need to factor in a portion of letting go or giving it up to higher power or uncertainty. And I know that that made me in particular really very uncomfortable. And I know I see this a lot in clients as well. So you may be one of those people who struggle with where the line is in terms of you doing and you receiving, or you releasing in order to receive. Now, in my experience, that line is going to be in a different place for everyone. However, so many of us as light workers and as people that genuinely want to be here to figure things out, help ourselves and the world, tend to overestimate that line, because we have this wounded part of ourselves, of our character, of our personality, of our ego, if you like, that says that we have to constantly be doing in order to receive, or in order to make the difference, because we don't want to really leave room for that uncertainty principle or factor to fill things in with what we don't agree with, or with instability or negativity. And in my experience, that belief or that habit or that kind of broken, pre-programmed part of our nervous system steps in and happens when we have had a lot of trauma or instability in childhood. And especially, as I said, if in childhood we grew up with caretakers who instilled a subconscious or unconscious belief that we couldn't count on them, or we couldn't count on the world, or that they could never count on others or the world, or that if you leave it up to chance, chances are it's not going to go your way. And so this could have been actually taught to us with verbal language. It could have been illustrated to us by the media that we consumed, or that we were put in front of to consume, still maybe consume on a daily basis. It could be illustrated to us by simply the way our caretakers behaved in their relationship with the world, or, like I said, taught to us with verbal language, putting us down, shaming us, or by our caretakers being codependent or manipulative or abusive or sick or busy, and putting more responsibility on us than we should have had at an early age, whether we were mature or enlightened or old souls or not. And this is something that happened to me. I know that it's happened with many of my clients. And even if you had what seems like a great childhood or a great relationship with your parents, you could recognize that they had some tendencies of maybe emotional immaturity or instability or having their own pessimistic view of the world around. Especially in previous generations, there were a lot of generations which were not ready to become self-aware or to become respectful or understanding of boundaries, or were carrying forward these old ideas of strife and sacrifice, especially the generations that maybe grew up in poorer areas or lived through the Great Depression. And so they pass on these unconscious habits, beliefs, or traits that you have to save, you have to try to factor in the uncertain, you have to try to get a jump on life, you have to maybe hoard materials or never throw anything away or constantly find a way to reuse something. And of course, if we're trying to do that in order to, let's say, preserve the environment, that's a very different case than doing it because we don't have the faith that we'll be able to provide those things for ourselves if the need arises at some future point. It's just a different way of being and looking at the world. And not that these people, passed these things on in most cases with ill intent. However, as I said, not many of them were interested or ready to do things like going to therapy or doing spiritual study or advancing their consciousness in the ways that have become more accepted now in today's day and age and culture. And simply they didn't have the resources really to be able to devote time or energy or research to do that. So now, because of the internet and the interconnectivity, regardless of how much time we may have, at least if you're here, we all have a higher level to be able to connect in with those resources and be able to participate in self-care by becoming more self-aware and investing in our own healing and reprogramming, whether it's through something like this or working with someone one-on-one. So first, before we go any further, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to do that for yourself with me and in this capacity and in any other ways that you choose to do going forward. I know that that will be beneficial to you, to your life, to the people around you, and to your family lines in really almost unimaginable or uncertain at this point ways. And so if you're here, I want you to unashamedly and unafraid be able to ask yourself that question, is uncertainty good or bad for me? And you'll be able to feel it even if you don't hear or get an answer audibly. You'll be able to feel, how does it make me feel when something is uncertain, when something is unknown? Sometimes we can become familiar and comfortable with certain aspects of the unknown, such as the dark or some parts of the shadow and our shadow work, but still greatly fear at some level or mistrust the uncertainty in terms of how something will come to pass. And most of us can tend to have a negative connotation or belief system kind of imprinted on our lens of perception, saying that, oh, it may come to pass in really hard or difficult ways, or maybe I need to learn the hard way, or maybe something bad needs to happen before something good happens for me, or maybe something bad has to happen after something good happens to me to balance things out. And this, in my experience, can stem from the beliefs of people that always tried to say that they were showing us both sides, but really were just all too willing to point out the pessimistic side and kind of try to down or dampen our belief in the positive side. And I know that on some level, they believed that they were doing that to try to protect us and protect our feelings from getting hurt and prevent us from being disappointed. However, in my experience, parents or friends or siblings or teachers even who instilled that belief really were just perpetuating more pain and disappointment because they were making us predisposed to accept or expect that disappointment rather than build the foundation to have enough courage to try for something and actually believe that we could receive it or that it would be successful and make a positive impact for ourselves and others. And if you grow up with those perceptions, it kind of feels like you're constantly pushing something uphill or carrying a heavy backpack of all these other burdens or beliefs, some of which will eventually manifest into physical things as well. They could manifest into physical ailments, or they could manifest into life problems that take us a while to figure out or to clear, condense, and transmute. So these are kind of the unconscious ways that our relationship with uncertainty can play out on a daily basis, especially on the days when not too much is going on or things seem to be going well and we're maybe trying to focus on creating something or manifesting something. These are the kinds of things that can be playing behind the scenes in the unconscious and kind of confusing some of the energy when we want to change something, heal something, or manifest. I also want to talk about the fact that a lot of us have trouble deciphering where to put that line of releasement when manifesting because of these negative connotation unconscious beliefs about uncertainty. So when you're feeling that, or if you recognize that you have felt that in the past, I encourage you to try to program a new belief in place of that as you're doing whatever other healing works that you are called to do, and say, what if it works out? What if it's really great? I actually don't know what's going to happen. Even if you're psychic, even if you have an inkling or an intuition about what's going to or could happen, remember, if it is not currently happening, you always have the ability to change it or shift gears or shift timelines or quantum leap or whatever you like to call it, and create or enable the entropy for a different timeline or a different future. This is where I believe so many people get stopped up in their intuition or their psychic abilities or their belief in the psychic abilities of others. It's why when I do my readings and my sessions with people, I always point out, I can help you understand where the energy comes from the past, where the energy is now, and where the entropy of that energy or that karma is currently projecting you towards. But I also want to always bring up the fact that the understanding of that energy from the past and the present are the tools in which we use to decide whether we agree with that possible future or whether we would rather use that knowledge to create and co-create a different one. It's why I don't do future readings or predictions in the traditional way and really have never done that. But it's, I think, what makes my readings stand out from that of others. And I have seen in the last few years that more people are starting to come online with this process and with this belief system that, yes, sometimes it's fun or interesting to get a reading about the future, but really, if that's something that you as a person or as a client are constantly tapping into, needing to hear from someone else what the future possibility is, I find that that's pointing the way to something deeper within you, which is the root or one of the roots of this detrimental relationship with uncertainty, where you want to be prepared for that thing and are in essence co-signing with it, whether it's good or bad or agreeable to you or not, rather than take it on as a piece of data, as a piece of possible information, and then reassess and stand in your power to say whether you actually want or consent to that experience or not. as I went a little bit further into this in another recent chat and channel session about stopping the process of being a self-fulfilling prophecy, which you can find a link for that and other chat and channel sessions in the description as well. This is something that we learn to unravel that process of being self-fulfilling prophecy if that prophecy is inherently something that we do not want or agree with, but the entropy seems really strong in taking us in that direction. So that's another avenue you can dive into at another time if you like. But I would really like to see us become more comfortable with redeveloping a relationship with uncertainty where we can sit in that space, in that liminal or transitional space, and trust that we can constantly shift focus to the positive possibility, and by doing that can actually become part of the receive for that positive possibility rather than be magnetized to the inherently negative or whatever is negative to you possibilities. Now, I would like to be part of a non-dualistic world and say that really there is no such thing as negative, but that is not currently the world that we live in my experience. It's a world that we each need to learn how to create for ourselves, which is why I say whatever is negative to you, because something might be negative to you and be really positive to someone else. So it really is all about personal context here. Now, while it's important for us to make sure we're not spiritually bypassing and only embracing the positive, I do think that some of us have gotten sidetracked in this trying to transmute the negative by saying all the time, well, it's for a higher purpose. And then we can, in essence, get ourselves caught on a hamster wheel of constantly seeking or allowing the things that we don't actually agree with or perceive as negative, because we see it as some sort of initiation or rite of passage to take the harder way in order to receive the good thing. So that's a side note to just say that I don't agree with spiritual bypassing, and of course we cannot only look at the positive, but I think so many of us have gotten into this habit of really perceiving so much of the negative while trying very hard to look at the positive, and forget to look at the roots of why we believe what we believe about the negative, the positive, or the uncertain. So we can say that we want to focus on the positive, but really be so distracted by the negative that we just don't have enough power or energy, in my experience, to actually receive it, create it, or bring it about. I do also want to talk about this time of transition, because especially in the past few years at the time of this recording, although this is a timeless empowerment piece, the world has really been encouraged to be in this liminal or in-between transitional space. Now, in Buddhism, there is a belief known as Bardo, B-A-R-D-O. Bardo describes the time period in ancient culture that was believed to lie for the soul between the time of death and the time of reincarnation and rebirth. But as more souls have been taking on this process of becoming aware or enlightened while they are still alive, newer Buddhist teachers, monks, and nuns, such as Pema Cödrön, who is a Tibetan nun who I highly recommend the works and books of if you are led to works like this, talk about the practice of Bardo also taking on context for those of us in daily life as we go through periods of death and rebirth. Now, even in terms of the different parts of our day or the different increments of our life, we can go through periods of Bardo. So we can say that what we went through this morning is completely dead and gone, and now we're sitting in that transitional space to step into the next reality. But this is especially more prevalent for people who are going through life changes. So if you are going through something like, say, a breakup or a divorce or if you're going through an ego death or a dark night of the soul, and then are being reborn into your next layer of awakening, ascension, or enlightenment. And during that time, we are in this bardo period. Now, when people actually physically die, Buddhist monks and nuns have encouraged during that period of bardo, which is usually observed for about 49 days after someone's passing, Buddhist tradition, or at least that form of Tibetan Buddhist tradition, will encourage people to pray for that soul, that they become aware that they have died and that they become aware of stepping out of that process of samsara, if they are ready to do so, of course. But how we can transition this into life now is that we can become aware and we can become recognizing of ourselves and of the fact that periods of our life or periods of our day or periods of our journey may be over, and we can make space and time with compassion for the grieving of those things and move forward into this phase of rebirth, of this term of uncertainty, and we can try to do so with a better relationship with uncertainty, where we can trust that that relationship can actually bring something better in its place. Now, I know this is something that a lot of us in the spiritual community believe in or perpetuate the belief in saying, oh, if you lose something, the universe will put something better in its place. And yes, in principle, that can be true. But if you are too focused at the moment on the thing that you are losing or lost or have the potential to lose, then you're not leaving much space, in my experience, for something better to take its place. Or if you have a belief or a program that's running in your perception or your perceptive lens or your unconscious that says that things don't go your way, or what are you going to do now that you've lost this, or things don't get replaced with something better, because maybe your trauma informed you in the past that sometimes bad things happen and good things don't come up to make up for it. Maybe your caretakers didn't protect you and you went through a traumatic experience and it wasn't transformed or replaced with something better, or maybe ever healed. And so if we're carrying these beliefs, it can be difficult for us to look at the other door that's opening or the other window that's opening, or to imagine, consent, or co-sign on something better taking its place, especially if we're doing so from a place of grief or victimhood, which is not to shame anyone feeling those emotions, but to help us understand that sometimes we are running those emotions unconsciously because we are failing to recognize them consciously or to take part in our own healing of those things consciously. And this is why I really put great faith in my practice of doing things like energy healing, of self-awareness, of new understanding, and getting to the roots of our feelings and belief systems. Because in my experience, if we want to create something different, we need to try to understand what's already been created or created for us, because sometimes we are not the creators of those beliefs. We are just the perpetuators of those beliefs based on, again, things that may have been passed on to us by family members or caretakers, or based on things that we may have learned through our trauma, and that the ego may have tried to define for us as bad or negative or scary within our roots or our nervous system because of going through that experience, even though we survived it. And so if you're here, I just want to remind you, if you've been through those things, you did survive it. Sometimes we get a piece of our soul that's lost, and this is where I do shamanic soul retrieval for soul loss, but we get those pieces of us that fractalize and fail to remember that we actually survived the event and seem to replay the traumatic events or the systemic abuses over and over and over again on some level, which actually develop this relationship that says that uncertainty is wrong and things go wrong if we are not in control, or if we maybe fail to do something or take something into account or consideration, that there will be danger on some level for us or for someone that we care about. And so we develop this sort of codependent relationship where we take on a lot, where we try to control as much as we can and always be doing in order to try to control the outcome and stir it to those positive things, rather than remember or relive the times that maybe we weren't in control, or we didn't take something into consideration, or our parent or caretaker didn't take something into consideration for us, and then things went really wrong. And that hurt part of us is still replaying that and crying out to be healed and to stop the vibration of that experience from manifesting into our current or future projected realities. So I know that's really deep work. If you're called to do that with some spiritual support, you can reach out to me and apply for one of my quantum, Sikhem, or shamanic energy healing or life and consciousness coaching customized packages and containers. Those we do on a consultation basis first to see if we are a good fit to help you deep dive and rise. And there is a contact form if you are so called to do that work with me in the description. But if you are doing that work on your own with your spirit guides or with any others who do this wonderful work, I am so grateful and encouraging of you too. I know that it can be daunting, and I hope that things like this and other chat and channel sessions can help support you in that work. Now, something else in the course of that journey that can be helpful to you is to realize that with uncertainty, there is a process of letting go. However, something that I learned from Pema Cödrön's work actually is that we don't necessarily have to let it go or be comfortable with the process of letting it go if that's something that triggers us or is something that we're just not able to do yet at this time, which I know people who have made that their life's work. And of course, one of the most spiritual books of all time that I'm sure you've seen, even if you don't know it, with a white and yellow cover, is about letting go. However, a lot of people who have carried a lot, in my experience, tend to have trouble with this process of letting go, especially if we are type A, if we are overdoers, overgivers, if we are caretakers of the world or feel responsible and codependent with our relationship with helping others and the world. It can be a really difficult process to let go. Or if we've been through huge traumas and we haven't yet found the right resources or people to help us through that trauma-informed healing process. And so if letting go is difficult for you, I encourage you to this Pema Cödrön version of that, which is, instead of letting go, let it be. For me, that sat really differently because letting go felt like giving up more power. And as someone who was abused and traumatized and on this process and journey of, working to renew and re-encourage and remember my power and help others do that in the world, I didn't quite understand. It didn't click for me, this process of letting go. I didn't yet see that as an empowering process, which of course it can be. And so I stepped into this other version of, okay, well, if I can't let it go because I feel overly responsible or that feels disempowering to me on some level, how can I let it be? And let it be actually felt very freeing. And I'm thinking of the Beatles song actually when I'm hearing this, and I love that Mother Mary is mentioned in that as someone who works fervently with her and many other forms of the goddess in different pantheons and traditions. So some of you may be getting that call too to listen to that song after this channeling. But let it be felt very freeing because when I could take on that understanding of letting it be, I could then step back and look at the ways in which I was not responsible for that situation and look at the ways in which I could then learn the process of counting on the universe to help me with that situation, or to be responsible with that situation, or to give back the responsibility to others involved who may actually be meant to be responsible or to be the carriers of that karma or that thing rather than me. And even in something like manifesting, letting it be becomes a different process than letting it go or even releasing it to higher power. Because I've found that no matter how much of a deep connection we have with God, goddess, creator, source, architect, whatever you like to call your higher power, we can still have trust issues with them. We can have abandonment issues with them from being separated and coming into physical form. And we can have issues, especially if we've signed up for it or gone through traumatic or difficult things in our life, trusting higher power or trusting that the universe actually has our best interest at heart. And this is where this whole work comes full circle and comes into play of being able to reset that trust and put a different program in the spin of uncertainty, and continuously say to yourself, I've said it a few times, but we've heard the opposite statement so many times. We need to sort of counteract that and hear this a few more times and saying, what if it goes right? I don't actually know what's going to happen because it's not currently happening. So it can go wonderful. Universe, how do I get to the version that can go wonderfully? And maybe step into the doing in terms of that, rather than telling yourself what you're quote unquote supposed to be doing, or even what you feel like you should be doing, even if those things have been illustrated as being helpful by and for others in the past. So this is actually where, for me, I can take a personal note and example here and say, I've gotten on a hamster wheel with spiritual practices or magical practices and thinking that I have to carry them out or carry them out in a certain way in order for good to come to pass. And really, the urgency of that or the obligation of that was crowding out a lot of the positive uncertainty factor, or crowding out the ability for that to actually have as much energy and positivity behind it as it should have, and have far enough reach, or be actually able to be manifested, crystallized, and received. So I know that person out there that is that light worker who feels like I have to do it right, or I have to get it right, or I have to follow so-and-so or certain book or certain spiritual tradition's example of doing it. I hope that that's going to be helpful to you like it was to me, because I know that I've had a particularly hard time with letting it be or letting it go, whichever statement you prefer, in terms of accepting when it was time for me to take a day off, which a friend recently encouraged me to do, or let it be, and be willing to even let some spiritual practices go and find a higher dimensional process. Because remember, you are evolving, and in evolution you want to leave room for higher ways to come through for you, or even to not do as much, because now you've done enough of the work to be a foundation for you, and you can find a new, less energy intensive way to do some things, such as protections or grounding or spell work, if you prefer that term, where those things can still be just as or even more impactful for you with a little less effort. And in my experience, that comes from also simultaneously going on a healing and self-worth journey and self-empowerment journey, which you do not have to do by yourself, by the way. You are definitely entitled, if you need it or so choose, to call in help with that process, whether that is from your helpers of the universe or also from someone who can stand with you and support you and give you some perspective that you may not have at the time when you are currently going through or doing or feeling all the things. Before we finish up the session here, I do also want to wrap up with some deep geeking for my fellow quantum physicists physics and quantum mechanics enthusiasts and relate something about uncertainty to a quantum mechanics principle, because it is one of my passions to bridge the gap really between the spiritual and scientific and different pantheons and all sorts of things that I believe we can find power in the connections with. And one of those things my guides brought to me to do this in this capacity is to think about the quantum mechanics principle, or the Hiesenberg principle of uncertainty, or the Hiesenberg uncertainty principle, if you're looking it up. And this is actually a principle in quantum mechanics, which is a little bit more scientific and mathematical than quantum physics, where the principle really proved that classical physics were incorrect in terms of understanding atoms and protons. And the principle in its most simplest of terms, and you can deep dive on YouTube, there are some excellent videos about this, but in the most simplest of terms, this Hiesenberg principle states that the more you know about a particle's location, the less you will probably know about its velocity, or the more you know about its velocity, the less you will probably know about its location. Now, that in essence is actually just showing us the trade-off, or the uncertainty principle or possibility factor of the universe. That if we are hyper-focused on one thing, it becomes inherently difficult to be as knowledgeable about the other. And in these cases, it's not actually that our measurement ability is limited. It is that reality is limited in these experiences. Now, this is also about the power of our energy to observe something. And of course, a friend reminded me of an experiment, the double slit experiment, where particles change based on how we observe them. This goes for manifestation too. You know, if you're not a scientific person, that's fine. But it helps me understand the esoteric and intuitive things as well, to understand that the more energy observance we place on something, the more potentiality it has to change, good or bad. And so many of us have this process where our brains tend to hyperfixate or hyperfocus on things that we actually don't agree with or want in our systems or in our life anymore. But it's easier for our ego to obsess or hyperfixate over those negative thoughts, or pay more attention to those negative thoughts or possibilities, especially when we don't have a inherent belief that uncertainty can be positive for us, or that we have the right to be loved, respected, or nurtured by the universe. If we have grown up with parents who were neglectful in any of the ways that they can be neglectful, they could have fed and clothed us but been neglectful in other areas, and made us feel on some level that we weren't worthy of being fully nurtured or supported or having a stable foundation, it is much more difficult for us to accept that relationship of love and support and grounding and positive rooting with the universe, in my experience. And this Hiesenberg principle is continuously being investigated, and there are even newer understandings of it which say that particles can be in superposition, meaning they can be in many different positions at once, which substantiates my belief, which maybe you would like it to be yours too, that, you know, we are multidimensional souls with quantum and infinite possibilities, and it's really up to us and our observance of which we would like to tune into and co-sign on creating or imagine and call into crystallized creation for us. And understanding that even in science, there is this principle that states that it is difficult, if not impossible, for us to control or have exact measurement on everything at the same time. Then I think, at least for me, that can help us go about this process of unraveling the need to be certain about or in control of everything, and forming a new belief that says that the things I am not certain about are not mine, or are not meant for me at this time, or are in the hands of a higher power or my higher self who loves and supports me and is ready to help me learn and win and receive in positive ways, because I know for me, I am definitely in this lifetime about ending the cycle of needing to learn through negative entropies or karmic manipulations or associations. And it is my passion to help others of you who want to be in that process as well. Thank you so much again for being here and allowing me to be part of that process with you, whether it is through a public work such as this, through the chat and channel sessions, whether you are a client or become a client. I am so thankful and honored to be part of your process. I hope that you will consider sticking around and becoming a subscriber so that you can be updated on future chat and channel sessions, other enlightened and spiritually infused materials, videos, and more. If you like this and found it helpful, please remember to like it so that it lets the algorithm know and spreads it to others that may find it helpful too. If you would like to share it, that would also be really appreciated. You will find the links to work with me, as I said, if so called, through quantum and Akashic Records readings, sessions, and those energy healing containers in the description and on my website, Damsel Designs, DAMCLdesigns.com. We haven't really talked about it yet, but another way that I use my gift and have availability on my website is through energy art and placing energy art on pieces such as Enlightened merch. So this image that you are seeing here in the background of the lion is a piece that I created when I really had to go into and start my process and journey of venturing into the unknown and healing my relationship with the uncertain. So that is currently available on some Enlightened merch pieces. If you would like to purchase that and explore that energy and that lion or Lyran energy for yourself, you can do that too. If you find this and my other public works helpful and you are called and drawn and able and want to support the channel, in addition to the ways you already do so just by being here and or by being a subscriber, I do accept energy exchange and all amounts appreciated donations to keep free and public works such as this going strong. So you can do that through the donation links in the description or through paypal.me/DSEnlightenedEdits if so called. It is not a requirement by any means, but it is greatly appreciated. Thank you, beautiful soul, so much again. I am very thrilled that you have made it through to the end of this chat and channel session with me, and I look forward to hearing about the ways that you develop a new and positive relationship with uncertainty. Feel free to take part in the chat section of this chat and channel and post about it if you would like, or you can also post generalized questions to me in that chat portion, and I will do my best to get back to you soon. Be blessed with love, light, and light codes. Love, Danielle. #Damsel at DSEnlightenedEdits of DamselDesigns.com.